Gentlemen, we are here. It is a beautiful day in the world of tone, and it's made even brighter by having our good friend and confidant, the great Mark Lettieri, joining us today from his studio in an undisclosed area in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And
it's Fort
we're
Worth,
just so
man.
happy to have
I got to
you.
rep my city.
That's
Fort
right.
Worth.
You know.
But originally from the Bay Area. So,
That's right.
So a native of my homeland, but now a little closer to Brian. We should say
Not
full
really.
disclosure.
Dude, DFW is big. We were just talking about this because Brian's starting a new gig, and I was like, does that mean I don't have to drive as far anymore? And he's like, well, actually,
Farther. Actually, 20 minutes further.
farther. We're working it out.
What's the difference like for you to drive from where you are to where the Guitar
It's like-
Sanctuary or Brian
Well,
is?
it's a solid hour from Fort Worth to McKinney, where the Guitar Sanctuary is, and then
Okay.
Brian's just decided to move 20 minutes farther north.
Well,
Yeah.
rumor
Right.
has it that
Obviously,
with this
wasn't
new gig,
thinking about his clients. You know,
I
so.
think Brian's actually going to be getting a private helicopter for $1 million.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he should be able to just pick you up.
I like that.
Yeah,
That's,
I like
on,
that.
that's on the agenda.
Yeah.
How
I
many
guess
to the chopper.
how many pigeons will it take to carry a pedal board?
You know, working
to-
through that. I started
Okay.
with that Disney Pixar Up movie with the balloons. The balloons
yeah.
didn't work. Took a lot more balloons, so I'm trying pigeons, and then I'll go
Okay.
to like seagulls next.
We just get drones, you know?
Oh, too easy.
Amazon's got them. Why not?
Thought.
like I guess this is as good of time as any, not to overshadow anything that we're going to talk about today with Mark, but we should be mentioned that Brian has branched off onto his own and is now running Omilion Audio as its own separate limited liability corporation. And if
Limited liability, very limited.
limited liability LLC, and we wish him the sincerest congratulations on making that move. It is a huge move to break away from the Guitar Sanctuary. As much as we love them and they continue to be a sponsor of the show, Brian is now on his own. So make sure you throw him some love, have him build you a pedal board, help him recoup his cost to rebuild his new home studio, his new suite where he will be making the pedal boards. So congratulations to you, Brian. I know that's a huge deal.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
And
Mark
if
will be
anyone's
the first
listening,
to patronize
and, if
Yes.
anyone's listening and they own any pigeon, drone, or helicopter
Yes.
companies,
Yeah.
this is the time. Please reach out.
Yeah.
But back to you, Mark. Sorry, Mark.
Back
you're
to
here.
Mark.
You're here. We're chatting to Mark Lettieri today.
Not that important.
So
Well, hey, yeah,
so,
good to be here. Thank you.
yeah. So Mark, we most of us who are alive, we know that you exist in the guitar world space. You are an incredible guitar player, and I think that goes without saying. I feel like I first met you through Chris Van Tassel when he was doing what he called his sentence out in out in the Texas area.
That's right.
And I feel like that must have been over 10 years ago, maybe
It
even
was.
closer to 15.
Yeah. I
You
met
had a
Chris.
Gumby suit on and you were doing some video demos.
Those are the days. Yeah, I met Chris around 2010, I think. 2009, 2010. And he was living in Dallas. Well, kind of. He was living in Flower Mound or something. But it was his fault because they bought a house where there were no trees. And so it was like, of course it's hot, dude. There's no trees. I got trees.
Very true.
But
Very
anyway, yeah, and then that's where I started using Rockett pedals, and they were a pretty new-ish company at the time, and so they needed some YouTube content, and I was dumb enough to do it. So we didn't know what we were doing, but the videos turned out cool. I mean, I just would noodle and twist knobs and try to make jokes, and we shot them like in his living room, and on one of them I just decided to wear a Gumby costume. I think it was for Josh Smith's tremolo pedal, maybe. I can't remember which pedal it was, but
That wasn't at his suggestion.
yeah. I don't know. It may have been a mutual decision to do that. Or I had it in the car from like a Halloween party maybe or something. And I was like, well, I got this Gumby costume. Maybe that'll get some views. like I said, we didn't know what we were doing. It was very DIY. This was long before the days of like the pro pedal, or maybe there were a few at the time, but like, this is what 14 years ago.
Yeah.
So then it's been a while. I guess I've known you longer than I thought.
Yeah, man, it's been a minute. And then I came out when I was in California. We did a couple demos for you for the Boost pedal.
That's right.
Yeah.
We were at the 25th Street recording in Oakland and the upstairs.
And that was probably 2014?
That was 2014, yeah.
So that was 10 years ago.
Yeah. It was over 10 years ago. So, man, I remember giving you some Boost pedals to give to Paul Jackson Jr. because you were going to go to LA the next day.
That's right.
And you were going to see him. One. Yeah.
Yep. It was
we played to this day. Look at that.
There you go. We played at the Hollywood Bowl, and I invited him out. And
that was the Snarky Puppy gig?
Yeah, it was, well, they don't call it this anymore, but at the time it was the Playboy Jazz Festival. Mm-hmm. And I think that was it would have been 2014, first time we played there. That was great. I remember we played, because the story with the Hollywood Bowl, especially with when they do festivals, is the stage spins, right? So if you play over your time limit, the stage will spin.
Brilliant.
Wow. And it's like very faux pas to do that. Like, you don't want to do that. And actually there's there's a list. It says the Hollywood Bowl Spinners Hall of Fame.
I was going to ask if there's a list. So they do have a list. And it's
like famous bands. I mean, people everyone knows that played over their time limit on a festival and got spun. There's actually, I think, a YouTube compilation video of bands getting spun. And so we were playing, I don't remember what song, something with kind of a long solo, or usually had a long, might have been even Lingus, I think. And Michael turned to Corey Henry and was like, dude, you got 30 seconds.
My God.
And he plays this thing or whatever. And then, bam, thank you, good night. And then it spun immediately. So we almost were part of the Spinners
Is there a
Club.
countdown clock so like,
yes, there's a huge
so there's no
one.
way to miss it.
Well, I mean, if you're a jazz band like us and we're all smelling our own farts and thinking we're great because we're jamming out and all that, you get
I didn't
lost.
know that was a saying. I've learned something here today.
We're so musical, and you get lost. And all of a sudden, it's like you never heard that phrase? Somebody likes to smell.
Well,
their own farts?
not in terms of playing music in a live context.
I'm being facetious, but if we're really into a moment or something, and especially a groove based band, if you're in a groove, you don't want to stop playing, and so it's kind of hard to be like, oh crap, we got 30 seconds, and then we gotta literally get turned around.
You bringing this up, I wrote down a few things I wanted to ask you, and I know I'm not going to get to 90% of them because that's just how these things go. There's always way more to talk about than there is time. But one of the things you just brought up, I really want to chat about quickly, which is
about
around. It's really around how to really reduce the amount of flatulence on stage, and I think that's something important to me. Something that's dear to my heart. No, it's around what you just said is a bit of a throwaway line, and I love this because it speaks to your musicianship rather than just your technical ability. But you guys, in the context of this example with Snarky Puppy, mid-song, mid-solo, it's like we're changing things up. We may have rehearsed this. The song might have been 7.5 minutes. We have 4.5 minutes left, and we got to make adjustments on the fly. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious how you guys have honed that skill. Does it always work as planned? Like, are you guys always heads up, looking each other in the eye? Is it ever missed? But the idea that we have a rehearsed song, but it's flexible. You gotta be willing to change in the moment. And I'm curious if there's not much of a question there, but if you can speak to that and how you guys have been able to hone this skill live, because I think it's something that a lot of us as musicians completely brush over, the ability to be flexible as we're in the gig.
Well, you did kind of nail it a little bit when you said if everyone's heads up, because generally speaking, we are. I mean, you kind of have to be in a band that big. I mean, you really should be in any band.
Yeah.
Eyes up, ears open, all that, being aware of what's going on with everybody. So definitely everyone in the band is adept at that. But we've also played a zillion shows, I mean, even though the lineup is more or less different every tour, it is different every tour, really. Each lineup, however many permutations that there are, has still done hundreds of gigs, and so we really know each other's playing very well. We know each other's tendencies, each other's sounds. And of course, Michael is a great band leader, music director, and really has his eye open about what's happening and where things need to go. But I mean, he's not the only one that makes decisions on the fly necessarily. I mean, I guess anyone is kind of open to doing that, just kind of depending on what they're playing at the moment. But, I think a big part of that band is why it works is even though everyone is like a stone cold killer on their instrument, there's not a lot of ego in the band. And so no one's really trying to take over any kind of moment necessarily. I mean, people might insert certain things which can take the music in different directions, but there's no like one-upsmanship necessarily, if that means anything. And so in a big band like that, everyone kind of has to operate at like 80% of their capacity maybe. And then when it's time to go for your solo or something, maybe you're at 100. But I think the question I get asked a lot is like, how do you guys have 3 guitar players? How does that work? Well, we each play at 33%. Yeah. And then it makes 100%. Yeah. And then those percentages vary depending on what's happening in the song. I'm not very good at math, but as one percentage
so far
goes
you're nailing
up,
it.
Good. As one percentage goes up, if one guy's at 75, then the other guys need to come down. So it should always equal 100, right? Between the 3 guitar players, for example, but also between the 9 or 10 people on stage. And the truth of that is, I change strings a lot less on a Snarky Puppy tour than I do on a Mark Lettieri group tour, because I'm just not playing as much guitar. I mean, it's simply put, there's multiple sections in Snarky Puppy songs where I'm not doing anything.
Which is easier said than done.
Yeah.
Maybe not like when you've done it so much, but
you'll see people leave the stage. Like there'll be certain, not because we don't want to. Yeah, seriously. I mean, it's like, there'll be a section where it's like, we know it's these 3 instruments that are going to have a moment for the next 2 minutes or whatever. And, we'll walk off to the side and let the spotlight be on them. Whereas like in the Lettieri group, it's 4 guys. I'm playing all the melodies, all the rhythm guitar. But we're all still operating at, 25% capacity, because we got to sound like a band and make it sound good and feel good. But I think the thing really to make a band, any band work, is you have to, even if your name is on the front, it's not about you. Right.
Oh, I think we need to say that one again.
All right. Well, even if your name is on the ticket, it's not about you, right? Like the guys in my band, I hired them because they're 1,000 times better than me. So like, I like being the sucky one in the band.
Well, it makes you better, right?
Exactly. It makes you better. And I know when to bring it back. I know when to step forward. I know when to operate in a dynamic so the whole ensemble sounds good. And I think a lot of that training came from playing in a band like Snarky Puppy.
Which I think I'll ask this last thing and then I'll pass off to the other guys. But I think the ability as a musician to be able to stop for a second, hands off your instrument, and just listen to what's going on around you, I find that, if I can say, very difficult. Like if I'm left to my own devices, my hands are always moving. My hands are always doing something. I got to play. I got to fill the space. And then when I stop, it's like, oh man, I'm clashing with like 3 other people right now. Like I'm not actually serving the song at all. I'm just taking away. But when you stop and listen, I think one of the things that I appreciate about, I was even in preparation for this, I was watching some Lettieri group videos, some Snarky Puppy ones. Some of the videos I first saw of Snarky Puppy that just blew me away. I did before I knew you guys existed. And the ability that you guys have and you have as a guitarist to not play. And then I think what we often overlook is that then when you do play, your notes have so much more value, and your notes actually will, the ability to create space. And then when you do come in, it actually lifts, like you're saying, the percentages change and now shift towards you and what you choose to do on the instrument.
Sure.
I know that a lot in theory, that's what I should do. But I'm curious, like, what would you tell me if we were just to say, like, Grant, you need to actually step up and get better? What would you tell a guitar player to help them increase their ability to listen and add rather than to noodle and take away?
Sure. I mean, I think for me, it's always just been playing with other people. It's, you know, we live in a world now where so much of your music and your playing is just done here in your room or something, and that's great, but because it's a safe environment, right? But the real growth happens in unsafe environments, you know, on the stage, in a studio with other musicians, even if in the studio where it's just you and an artist and a producer or something, for example, right? You grow the most in situations where you're uncomfortable. And so, I mean, for me, I spent a lot of my late teens, early 20s in jam sessions, like blues jam sessions or R&B jam sessions, especially here in Dallas. There used to be loads of these great R&B, soul, groove, jazz jam sessions. And that's where you would kind of cut your teeth and learn how to play in a band and learn how to groove and learn how to add something that was good. Because if you added something that wasn't good, someone on stage would let you know. Whether it was the leader of the jam, the keyboard player, or whoever it was, or the singer. That's always awkward, you know.
Would you be willing to describe a remarkable reprimand that you had in your early days of
well, I wouldn't. I mean, I don't know if there was any like. I mean, I've had some fun things said to me, but I'm trying to think. I mean, I do have a great story, but it doesn't apply to what we're talking about. But I really want to tell it.
Okay,
do it.
But
it's a safe space.
So okay, yeah, but this might apply. So, and I think it does. So this was years ago. I mean, before I met Mason, this was probably 2006 or something, and 5 maybe even. And I was at a jam session. Kind of at the last minute. There used to be this place in South Dallas called Sankofa, and the jam was usually hosted by people that were part of Erykah Badu's band crew. And just a lot of the really heavy cats from the Dallas scene. And I had a good friend who was going to the jam session. I didn't know it was happening that night, but she called and she said, "Hey, whatever you're doing, come down to Sankofa. Bernard Wright's going to be here." And I didn't really know who Bernard Wright was, but if you guys don't know him, he was one of the most incredible musicians I've ever come across. Piano player, singer, writer. Worked with Roberta Flack, Miles Davis, Marcus Miller. He had that LL Cool J song, "Who Do You Love?" From the 90s. That was a Bernard Wright sample. Yeah.
Okay.
G's and Hustlers, the Snoop Dogg, I think it was a Snoop Dogg song, the Bernard Wright sample. So a lot of his kind of instrumental funk soul stuff was sampled by a lot of hip hop artists. Anyway, the guy was a musical genius and kind of was sort of the godfather of a lot of Dallas musicians. And he played with Snarky Puppy for a while. And anyway, my friend Lanisha was like, "You got to come check, you know, you got to come play." I was like, "Well, I just have a guitar." She said, "Whatever. They probably have amps or something." I was like, "Okay, you got to play with Bernard." So I drove out there and ended up in the session and had to just play like straight into the PA.
Oh, beautiful.
I think I had a Boss DS1 distortion. Maybe I had my pedal board or something, but didn't have an amp. And, you know, my pedal board was very basic at the time. And I was just like, well, I'll just plug in, you know. And I remember just kind of like just playing, just the whole time, just playing. Probably not listening to anything Bernard was playing. Probably not listening to anything the other guitar player was playing. Because I was just like, Bernard's got to hear me. Like, he's got to know, you know, it was sort of like a young guy ego thing. Like, notice me. Right. And, afterwards in the parking lot, Bernard's standing there and I'm putting some stuff in my car and I walk over to him and I said, "Hey, Bernard, you know, I'm Mark. It was a real pleasure to play with you. You know, this was great. Thank you so much." And he goes, "Mother effort, yes. Next time, bring a goddamn guitar amp, man. Jimi Hendrix didn't die for no direct box." Like, you're an electric guitar player. You better be the loudest MF in South Dallas tonight.
Oh my God.
And I was like, and he had a point. You know, he had a point. And I think the overall point, well, first of all, I was sort of like mortified, but also laughed a lot about it. But I think his overall point was like, if you're going to be in a situation, be professional. Like, listen, bring the right gear, first of all, but bigger than that, if you're going to add something to the conversation, it better be right with intent and it better elevate the whole thing. Otherwise, don't do anything.
Yeah.
Because all I heard was you just noodling, thinking I was going to care about that. Right. So I think about that every day. And there were a lot more F words in that story and other things that I will save for when we're having some
You made
beers.
sure you remember it.
Yeah. But that stuck with me a lot. You know, it's like if you're going to bring something to the table, make sure it's with purpose and intent and not because of something you want to do, but because of something that could actually elevate this musical thing. Because if it's not, don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, so wise words from a wise dude.
Wow.
Very cool.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I got to say, I mean, I have been to plenty of your concerts at the Sanctuary. I think I've only ever really seen you at the Sanctuary. And I just love how the four of you guys just work so well together. Like it's Wes, right? He does bass.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then remind me what the keys player's name is.
Daniel Porter.
Yeah, he was absolutely killer.
Yeah.
Whenever he plays, I remember I think we filmed like some live stream thing for you guys.
Yeah, I remember that.
We did like 10 or like we did like 15 songs, and just like hearing you guys talk through the process, like it really was a 25% split between everyone because you're all working together. Of course, like, you know, even though it is a 25%, like, you know, you're still kind of like the boss, like you're telling them like, hey, this is what, like, but they like listen to. That's the cool thing about musicians. Like I have this all the time too, and I only ever played church gigs, but like I tell people like the best musicians sometimes are just the ones that are just open to listening. So like they listen to what you like. I don't know if you can play drums. I don't know if you can play keys, but like your input to those guys, and they're like, regardless if they're paying you to be there, if you're paying them to be there, they're still like, yeah, okay, yeah, I like that, and like they're excited. So I've always appreciated that about your guys's. Your band is that they're all like so well, like, and I know that you guys are friends and you've been doing this a long time and stuff, but it's just cool to see when people really work together, and it's not like, oh well, I'm used to doing this. It's like, yeah, sure, whatever, let's do it,
right? Because
it's fun. Like it was always fun to see that and watch back the playbacks and hear the parts and see you guys playing and certain like the song that we talked about you playing at the end of this, like I've seen that song dozens of times played, and hearing all of you play your parts, and it's just, I've always appreciated how you guys interact with each other. It's just super cool.
Cool. Thanks, man.
It's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun thing to do, and I always make sure that I am in musical situations, whether it's my own band or something else, where yeah, everyone is open to learning and trying new things and being. I mean, Mason can attest to this. He's interviewed all the greatest session guitar players in the world, and they probably will have all told him like, I'm there to make music, I'm there to do a job. They're hiring me because I have a sound, but they also know that sound can be malleable to getting the right performance out of this song and what's best for the producer and the artist, you know, ultimately. So I look at my music the same way. I mean, yes, I'm playing the majority of the melodies and sort of out front in that regard, but I write and I play the shows in a way that hopefully incorporates the entire ensemble. Otherwise, I would just show up with a laptop. You know, I mean, my favorite instrumental bands, everyone is great. Even if it's like one person's record or something, like everyone on the date is killing.
Yeah.
You listen to a Miles Davis record for everybody that played on it, not just Miles. You listen to a Jeff Beck record for everyone that played on it, not just Jeff. And so hopefully I can incorporate that. If you listen to a Mark Lettieri song, you'd be like, wow, that guitar's great, but god dang, that bass line, man, this groove, everything's really killing. And Snarky Puppy's the same way. We just want to make great songs, great music.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is like so many people going to the concerts, they may not be just like a guitarist fan. Like they may be, like you said, but like there's plenty of songs. Like I remember going to a John Mayer concert with Shane Henry, you know Shane.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, I was like, oh, but that bass line he played in that song was like, it's like, that's my favorite thing. It's like, oh, what about the guitar? I'm like, yeah, I love the guitar too, but like that little part, like, so yeah, I think it's cool. How you say that? It's not just a name.
I was just going to say before that I was watching some of your quartet, the Mark Lettieri group, and I'd never seen your keyboard player play before. And so he had, you guys were playing a song. I'm horrible with song names. I apologize. I don't remember what the song is called. But your keyboard player is holding one chord for like the first half of the entire song. He's just sitting there, one hand, just watching as you guys were playing. Like, is this guy ever going to play anything different? And like questioning, like, not knowing the song yet. I hadn't heard it before. And then he just, like, I think you did a bit of a solo, and then he just starts letting loose, going on the pitch shifter on the left-hand side of the keyboard, and like he's just starts shredding. Like, man, this guy has the ability to just hold back, patience, sit there, and then he knows when his time is right, he just goes for it. And then he pulls back again and then leaves room for someone else. And I know, we kind of driving this point home, but man, it was very impressive. And it was even interesting to see my own reaction to looking at that. Cool. And it's just letting the song develop. And then the point comes where it's his turn to kind of step forward a bit, and
cool.
It was very cool. I want to keep, obviously, we're going to keep chatting to Mark here. I want to stop for a quick ad break to chat about two of the sponsors that make this podcast possible. The first one is the Guitar Sanctuary in McKinney, Texas, which I now know is roughly an hour away from Mark, an hour and 20 if you want to go over to Brian's new place. The Guitar Sanctuary is the place to go if you want to get any of your guitaring needs, whether it's Mark's signature PRS, which I'm sure we'll chat about very soon, or guitar pedals from J Rockett, another signature piece of gear, or Jackson. Any of the guitar things that you need, check out theguitarsanctuary.com. Or if you're local to McKinney, just drive over and say hello. And you can still get Brian after the fact to set up your rig for you in his new shop. And the Guitar Sanctuary will set that all up for you. So check out theguitarsanctuary.com. I also want to chat about Neural DSP. We are all big fans of Neural plugins, the Quad Cortex, maybe some new piece of gear they're about to launch. Neural has incredible gear, and the Quad Cortex is now selling at a new price as of late last year, I believe, for $16.99 for the Quad Cortex. And you can also use a coupon code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, for 30% off all of their plugins that are 90 days old or older. So nothing that's absolutely brand new, but 90 days or older. And you can also now get the Morgan amp suite, which I'm pumped about, for 30% off. 70% away from free, as we like to say on the podcast. Quad Cortex now has the Cortex Control as well, which means you can edit it from your computer and go, jump off the diving board and go even deeper into the Quad Cortex and really enjoy that. So check them out, neuraldsp.com, and use the code Chairmen for 30% off all of their plugins. Mason, I'm going to throw it back to you now that we've chatted about those couple of sponsors.
Thank you, Grant. Well, Mark, I do want to talk to you more, but I feel like you're tuning that guitar there. I feel like we'd be remiss at this point to do a quick tonal intermission, where maybe
intermission.
Maybe like you just want to. Maybe you're just feeling something. The spirit is catching you at this particular moment. Show us a little ditty you've been working on.
A ditty?
Do it.
There's a joke in there somewhere, but I'm not going to make it. Oops. I'm just, what have I been working on? I mean, well, here's the Fiore. I'm running it through the pedal board that Brian made.
Okay.
Actually.
Nice. I'm not biased at all.
And it's going through the Kemper, actually. And so, I just have I have my board straight into the Kemper, and the Kemper is a profile of a third power amp, which are great amps. Those amps are very, very cool. I think this is a Dreamweaver maybe. But yeah, actually, I was just kind of like getting sounds together sort of for some new songs that I am putting out this summer on an album. And should have changed these strings. These things are kind of pulverized, but but yeah, I mean, this is the PRS Fiore, and it's, I don't know, all the specs are online, but I guess I can repeat it.
Well, I mean, even for those people that are listening, it's a burst guitar, humbucker in the bridge, 2 singles.
Yep. SSH Swamp Ash body. This is actually a new color. The first color was like a red. But yeah, it's 10-inch radius. What else is about it? The neck shape is it's kind of a custom thing that we modified after like a pattern regular, I think, if you're familiar with the PRS necks. We wound the pickup specifically for this guitar, so that they would all sound good together. It's got a 2-post trem, which is kind of a new thing for PRS. Actually, probably move the microphone here so you can see it a little better. And then it's got a bunch of cool switching options where you can combine like these two. You can take this from series to parallel. You can combine all 3. So I wanted to make a kind of a do everything guitar, but one that does everything well, not one that just has features for features' sake. So,
well, I think you're pretty successful. I was recently hanging out with Jubu Smith and Errol.
Oh,
Cooney,
yeah. Errol plays one.
And Errol swears by it. I saw them in their band Legally Blind.
Yeah. Oh man.
And Errol plays, not only with Legally Blind but also with Stevie Wonder, somebody some of you may have heard of. And he says, yeah, it's just like a total workhorse. And I think for people who are, like him and you, where they're looking for these workhorse guitars, or they can only take 1 or 2 guitars. And I actually think he's touring with Janet Jackson right now. I think Errol's touring. Yeah. So this guitar is getting some love from a lot of players that are professionals and really understand the value of having something that is really versatile. And I think although the HSS guitars have sort of been well documented as being versatile in their ability to be able to cover a lot of ground, this seems like I've never actually played one of your guitars, Mark.
Oh, okay.
But they look gorgeous, and I love the feature set. Certainly, there's something for everybody with it. But maybe more importantly than the specs, which we can all look up, can you kind of give us some insight as to sort of the arc of the creation of this? Like, how many years was it from sort of inception to when it became a product that was out in the market? And like, when I first knew you, I think when I first knew you, you might have had like a fender that was like a natural finish.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
It's right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have it.
And then you went to the Grosh. And then, that was kind of the guitar for forever. And then this came about. So I've known you through a few different, guitar iterations, but yeah, tell us about kind of how this came to be and the development arc of the guitar.
Sure. Well, the actual timeline was maybe like a year and a little over a year. So not that long. But PRS knows what they're doing. So we didn't really have to dig too deep, but I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, the Fiore is kind of like, it's sort of a cross between both of these in an interesting way. This one's kind of like powerful and this one's kind of more sweet. And so I was like, well, can we have both? and so that's what we really worked on to get. And that's why we worked so hard on the pickups, because I wanted them to be powerful and upfront, but also, if you just touch the tone knob a little bit, it rolls off to where it sweetens it up, but doesn't get you can make it dark, but it's really just a matter of kind of rolling off that high end. And so anyway, so PRS kind of knew the sound that I had in my head, and we started with similar dimensions with those 2 guitars, like a 10-inch radius and a Swamp Ash body. And then I demanded that we do a 2-post tremolo because that's what I was used to. Now, I didn't know this, but apparently they were already working on one for the Silver Sky SE.
Yeah.
So they had started tooling around with that already. But I was like, I didn't know at the time. I was like, look, we just need, I have to have a 2-post. This is how it works with my hands, you know? And it's a pretty solid bridge. I mean, so we have this trem bar that has a weighted metal tip that actually just kind of adds performance and sort of sustain and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, the body style was something that I drew out of a couple different shapes that they had already made, like the EG, the Silver Sky, and the DC3. I think it was the DC.
Yep.
And so we just kind of like, I got on the computer and was like, and then we'll cut there. We'll do that. And then I wanted to have this here to sort of like match this carve here, which I thought was kind of a cool idea. Yeah. Let's see, what else did we do? I wanted the vintage tuners just because I like the look. They look a little less intrusive, maybe, than the bigger ones. But the pickups, we went back and forth a lot on the pickups. The bridge, actually, the neck pickup we were kind of able to get right away, but the bridge pickup took a little bit extra work. And let's see, what else? We got the switching system together. That's based on what I had done in both of those other guitars, which is something that you can find. I think any luthier can kind of do it. It just takes a couple extra wires. But I really dig the sound of the neck and the bridge together, kind of like this sort of. It's that just funky kind of. That sort of funky Telecaster sound, which I really have always loved. And so I was like, well, shoot.
And do you keep the bridge in humbucker mode when you do that, or do you split it, or is there a split option?
It is in humbucker now, but there is it's not a split, it's a series parallel. So it goes from series when it's down to parallel when it's up. And it just kind of like takes a little bit of the mids out. You know, further spankifies it. And then, you know, by itself, it's pretty. It's nice. You know, I don't know how well this is translating through the computer, but.
Well, it's interesting that with the no split thing, I think a lot of people on HSS guitars really want to have this coil split, and in the sort of investigation of this Dan Huff guitar, which I think is like a really interesting guitar, everybody presumed that it was a series, or that it was a split coil, but it's all series parallel. He basically has like a switch to make every pickup either series or parallel, because the neck pickups, even though they look like singles, they're stacked.
They're actually humbuckers. Oh, wow. It's pretty cool.
And so, so three toggle switches with 3, options to make him series or parallel.
I'd like to try that guitar.
It was actually surprisingly a good guitar. Like a lot of these number ones for these players, whether we're talking about Lee Ritenour or Ray Parker or any of these guys, that if you're talking to them about their main guitar and they let you play it, most of them are not like you wouldn't pick it up at a guitar store and be like, if not knowing what it was, and say, this is an amazing guitar. This is a really great guitar. Like a lot of them are really heavy. They've just sort of they've learned that as their baseline, and they understand how to manipulate whatever that guitar can produce. Sure. The Dan Huff guitar is a great guitar. Like it's a really good guitar. It's nice. Even though it's been bastardized, it's a really great example of a Strat guitar. I mean, it's not heavy. Right. The neck's not too big. It's very easy to play. So it was really, it was probably the best plain sort of guitar that's been on a lot of hit records that I've come across.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, without you bring up the series parallel thing, we tried doing it as just a standard coil split, but we lost too much low end.
Yeah, so, it really castrates the tone.
Right, so the series parallel thing just became, but I mean, it sounds.
I mean, it doesn't sound bad.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that was just the neck pickup with a little delay sauce, but I love the way, you know,
delay sauce.
A little out of tune, but we explained the strings issue earlier. So. So works great. I love this guitar.
Yeah,
I love how
to do. Yeah,
I love how at any point it's like I don't know if you're going to play something in the realm of Bon Jovi, clean jazz, country, Metallica. Like it sounds like you've got sounds up your sleeve for just about anything we could throw at you. It's really cool to see that.
I don't know.
You know, we obviously can't see your pedal board right now, but whatever effects you've chosen and the techniques you have up your sleeve, and obviously the Fiore as well, comes together to bring this really cool, flexible combination of what you've done on purpose. But it's cool to hear the different tones you got going on.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the board is it's changing often, but it's always just sort of like the same permutations or just different permutations of the same kind of things.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say are, based on that, what are sort of the Mark Lettieri staples? Like the things that are kind of always in circulation that kind of need to be there?
I mean, usually 2 drives, like one that'll be low to mid and then one that's high because I stack them. I love phase shifter. That's just kind of one of my go-to, like, oh, we need a sound. Okay. You know?
Yep.
Why not? Which phase shifter?
That's an MXR Phase 95.
Nice.
Yeah.
And do you keep it in the 90 or the 45 setting?
That is in the 45 setting, actually.
And there you go.
And then I usually have a delay or 2 and then a reverb.
And what are you gravitating towards these days in terms of your flavor of overdrive, delay, and reverb?
Okay. Well, the drives, I have 4 on the board right now.
Nice.
I have a Keeley Angry Orange, which is it's a big muff and a DS1 together. And so I have it set as a big muff. I use fuzz as like a lead boost, right? I have a Rev Amps Chat Breaker, which is kind of like a blues breaker circuit. That would set moderately middle of the road, I think. That's a lot of reverb, sorry. And then the J Rockett Melody. Which is a little bit of a fatter, thicker drive. And then the J Rockett HRM Volume 2, which was the one I was using for the Bon Jovi stuff.
Thank you.
Which is really just... It's supposed to be like a Dumble, but I don't... Obviously, that didn't sound like a Dumble. It's just a really nice, thick, gainy...
What is Dumble anyway? We don't.
I don't even know.
What is Dumble anymore?
I have no idea. And so I combine those, you know, this would be a sound maybe I would use. Like, here's the melody. Here's the melody with the Angry Orange. And so...
On your neck?
That was the bridge pickup.
Oh,
but on the neck pickup, it sounds like this. You know, it does all the cool. I need to stop playing that lick. I play that lick all the time. So,
it sounded like a slide. That's crazy.
Well, it's my fake Jeff Beck impersonation. But The delays currently are an MXR Joshua, which is super cool. I'm really liking it. It's like they took the carbon copy and then added 1,000 other cool things to it. And then the Keeley Andy Timmons Halo, which has been a real fun pedal to use.
Yep.
It's a great pedal.
Yeah. And then I've had this Hall of Fame reverb on here for like 342 years. So.
And is this version 2 or version 1 Hall of Fame?
This is a version 2, I think only because version 1 broke or something. I don't know what happened to it. I think one of the switch is dirty or something, so I just swapped it out.
Do you still have the M5 on there?
I swapped the M5 out for an HX1.
Nice.
Okay.
Ooh,
and what's the verdict on the HX1?
I'm really liking it. I have some cool sounds. Well, I think this is like a harmonizer. Yeah, that's a harmonizer, but I found this is really cool. It's called Saturn 5, and it's like a ring modulator.
Oh, that's fun.
Yes.
You're making your bass player nervous.
Well,
right?
Maybe. I don't know. So that's kind of a neat sound. What else is on here?
That's killer.
I'm curious with
cool.
that. Like right before we move on really quick, do you ever use something like the HX1, a multi-effects pedal, when you're in the I need to come up with new material phase to get inspiration for new sounds? Or is it more the other way around where you have a sound in your head? It's like, I think HX1 might be able to help me out with that. I need to go find it.
It's probably a little bit of both. I think it's mostly when I'm writing, I'm not really thinking about tone.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, that always just kind of comes late. Like the part kind of dictates what sound it needs to have. Like on my last record that I'm putting out in July, I wrote a tune primarily on standard guitar, but then when I recorded, I'm like, screw it, I'm going to play bass 6.
What's that? I don't know what that is.
A bass 6, well, I guess Fender came up with the name, but it's basically just a guitar tuned in bass octave.
Oh, okay.
So you have guitar, then you have baritone guitar,
yep.
And then I guess you would have bass 6. So it's a 6-string guitar tuned in bass octave.
And I assume cool. Thicker strings still, though.
Very thick strings. Yeah, and the neck is like long.
Yeah.
But you know, that was one of those. Like, I didn't write the song on the bass 6. I wrote the song on the guitar.
That's incredible. I like that.
So, but yeah, the HX1 has a lot of cool things. I mean, I have my new wave chorus as well.
By Jackson?
You know. Yep, by Jackson. Yeah, and I think there's this is cool, the MXR Poly Blue Octave. There's another octave pedal, which is awesome. Really neat. It's got a lot of features. Yeah. And then this is the newest edition, which is this GNI Octave Fuzz that Andy, the Andys, as I call them, Andy Timmons and Andy Wood, two good buddies of mine, they're both using them. And I was like, well, I want one too. They're very hard to find. They're incredibly hard to find because they're made in Brazil. And I've like emailed them and been like, hey, I'd really like to buy one, you know, and I just never heard anything. And so strangely enough, I crashed Andy Wood's Patreon Zoom call the other day because I like to do that sometimes. And one of his students was like, we were just talking about pedals, and one of his students was like, yeah, I have one of those. I have 2. And so he sold me one.
No,
that's amazing.
So I got really
awesome.
Lucky. Yeah. So, but it's a fun, just like. This is a cool pedal. I'm really digging that. So that's nice to put in front, you know, if you want like this kind of thing happening. Let's see.
Oh, there we go.
Right? A little oscillating kind of thing. So yeah, I'm having fun just dialing in sounds for this new record for these tours we got coming up. So
And how much do your cats come into play for inspiring you? For those listening, a cat just walked on screen.
Well, I'm actually glad he's in here because he hasn't been feeling well. So he's sort of been kind of sleeping most of the day. He still looks a little bit slow. I think he wants to go. That's like a storage room / Pilates room.
You do look like a guy that does Pilates. Like,
I don't. My wife does. My wife. That shit's too hard for me. My wife is a Pilates instructor, so she has a little room back there where she practices. But it has a big window, and he likes to go in there and sit. Well, currently he sits on my band merch. So if you order a T-shirt from marklettieri.com
and you just start
cat
sneezing.
hair on it,
yeah.
Sorry about that. So yeah, to get a treat from the Lettieri family. So he probably wants to go in there and sit. But anyway, the cats do. They come into play. I've written a couple songs about them, and they're a big part of our family here. So.
Actually, yeah. Before we go to Brian for an ad break, I actually heard that you and your cats were one of the inspirations for the Friends song "Smelly Cat."
Oh, is that right?
So I just wanted to thank you for that. Yeah, you've really changed my childhood because of that.
Was that show funny? Have we decided if it was funny?
Well, looking back on it now and hearing all the laugh tracks, it's become less funny when you hear, when I feel like I'm being told I need to laugh, I kind of internally rebel and I'm not laughing at that.
Maybe
so I don't know.
I never really watched it. I just, was like,
yeah.
Maybe
I think it's one of those shows that's easy to look back on, and in your head it's really funny, and then you go back and watch it. Oh, maybe not as much as I thought.
It's more cringy. It's more cringy. So Grant, when you watch that show, do you sit there like this? Nope. Not laughing.
I mean, internally enjoying it, but also externally not. I will not give them the satisfaction.
That's funny. We're going back and we're watching Full House again. Which is
how's that?
Done.
A lot of those jokes
too.
Yeah. Well, I don't skip that. I'm gonna watch. We're watching the original, and you're like, oh wow, there's some jokes. When you're 7 that totally go over your head. When now
100%.
You're older, you're like, oh
yeah. The hardest thing for me on Full House is like Bob Saget. His humor separately from Full House is like so not family friendly. I had no idea.
He plays both sides of the spectrum.
That guy, he could do it all.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, in perfectly great. He actually he was super nice to me. I met him at this restaurant in Santa Monica called the Border Grill, and he was super cool. But yeah, it's like watching Full House now, knowing like the brand of comedy that
he's got a dark side.
It's very different than Full House. I just wonder like what this, like between takes, like did he tone it down for the kids or was he just like going for it?
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I don't know much about the casting for that gig, but I mean, I'm assuming he was doing stand up before he got cast. And so I don't know if maybe his stand up changed after the show or they just knew about it and they were just like, all right, man, we're going to have you play like the All American Family Dad, Yeah. But this show was great. I love that show.
Yeah. Well, let's throw to you, Brian, for last 2 sponsors that make the podcast possible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so our final 2 sponsors, I literally, as you can look behind me in my new space, a mono case over here, if I move the microphone. I just got a brand new mono guitar bag in from my Jazzmaster that I've just recently purchased. Mm-hmm. And the guys over at monocreators.com are incredible. Fast shipping. They have gig bags, backpacks. I'm looking at a backpack I have right here. Like I said, I got them. They're coming out of the walls. And they have a code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, for 10% off high quality cases, gig bags, backpacks, power supplies, pedal boards. They have so much stuff on there and 10% off. So go to monocreators.com, use the discount code, let them know the Chairman sent you, buy something today. And then finally, and I always say it, and I will say it from here on out, simply the best. The guys over at Bestronix or btpa.com. Brad and them, they sell all sorts of different connectors, MIDI connectors, 2.1 millimeter DC connectors for all the power supplies, cabling, everything that you need. Brad and the guys can help you out. Very quick response. Grant and I were talking about how quickly Brad will email you back and you need an order and it's sent out the same day. So check them out. Use the code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, for 10% off. You won't be disappointed because They're the best. They have such a variety of cabling stuff that I never even knew that they had, and they have it. So check them out. You won't be disappointed. And that's it.
I have one question for you. Well, lots of questions. One question I want to ask right now. We just went through, obviously, a lot of the effects on your board, the different series, parallel pickup selections on your guitar. Mm-hmm. Like, you've got a lot at your fingertips and at your feet that you could potentially choose from in a gig. Mm-hmm. How are you finding the balance, or is this maybe still tricky, but how do you find the balance between option paralysis and culling back all your options so you really have to focus on being creative on your instrument?
Yeah, sure.
What's the journey been there?
I don't need all this stuff.
But you're a guitar player.
To be honest, but it's fun to, it's one of those things, and I'm sure we can all relate to, like, I don't need it, but of course there's going to come across a time where I'm going to be like in the heat of a gig and be like, man, I wish I had the whatever that I took off the board. I'm pretty in tune with what I know the music that I play needs to have. And even like if I go to a session or something, it's rare that I use crazy sounds, maybe. And that might just be the kind of music that I'm generally called to do, is just doesn't involve that. But yeah, with all that being said, yes, the board probably does way more than I would need it to do. But why not? I like being able to pick and choose, but I guess to answer your question, I'm just real mindful about, like, am I using effects for the music, or I'm using effects to just see how many effects I can use, right? And I don't want to do that, because then you spend the whole gig stomping on things. And I don't have a MIDI switcher because well, I don't know. I mean, I'm changing things out a lot, but like sometimes I don't want to be set in a preset land. Maybe this one night I want to solo with this sound. I want to solo with this sound. I mean, there are certain things which probably a MIDI thing would help me out with, but I've made it this far without one, I guess. So we'll see.
There's also a lot of programming and stuff on that. So like you take so much time from your practicing or writing to do that. So I mean, it's also, I think it's also fun to see, because I've seen you do some songs where sometimes you use this effect and then other times you kick down other stuff because sometimes just what you're feeling.
There. Yeah, it was there. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I generally try to do it. I mean, I am thinking it's like, well, maybe it would be cool if I could hit one button and all these three pedals would turn off, and so that I get that. But I'm also this is really silly, but I'm also very mindful of like how big the pedal board is. How much does it weigh? Am I going to get charged an overage fee to fly with this thing? Because I added a MIDI switcher, and like in my world, little independent guitar guy, like I'm paying for all that. So, if I could expense it to a tour, maybe I would, but usually I'm expensing it to my Chase Freedom credit card. So it is what it is. So I do think about that kind of stuff too. Sadly, maybe not.
It does make it maybe one day I won't have to. Though.
I guess, yeah. But like I can probably do the Mark Lettieri band gig or the Mark Lettieri group gig or a Snarky Puppy gig with the couple pedals we talked about, like just two overdrives and delay. I could probably do the whole gig easy, actually.
You find that it changes how you approach it, though? Like, I think some of my favorite times is when I've been limited. And I was actually going to ask you your thoughts on the saying of limitations breed creativity, and if you agree or disagree.
I agree. I mean, I think it breeds something. I don't know if it's creativity necessarily, but it breeds a different side of your playing for sure. And maybe that could lead to something creative or just a different way of approaching things. I mean, I've done gigs where the airline lost the pedal board or something like that, and I had to like get a pedal from this friend and a pedal from that friend and an amp from the back line, which hopefully maybe had some reverb or something. I mean, I've done gigs on other people's guitars because my guitar didn't show up. There's a video of us playing in Dubai, and I'm playing Lingus on like a hardtail PRS that somebody had brought to the show. And there's a comment that's like, I don't like Mark's tone on the PRS guitar. I'm like, that wasn't even mine.
Oh no.
It's like, so whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, I've done gigs like that. I've done gigs into little practice amps because that was the only thing that was there. So yeah, I mean, you play with what you play in a way that hopefully is creative based, and it's inspired by what you have at your feet. And yeah, sometimes having a big board, you get caught up in dialing in things and this, that, and the other. And it's like, bro, just play your guitar, man.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful.
What about imposing deliberate obstacles as a... I don't know if you've heard of the Django.
I don't know, man. I don't think I'm good enough to impose deliberate obstacles. I mean, I guess in a sense, a deliberate obstacle for me would be the fact that I play a lot of baritone guitar, which is not an instrument that you can shred on. At least I can't. I mean, I'm sure there's people that can, but that's a limitation in how I express, because I can't do all the things that I can do on this guitar as I can on a baritone because the strings are huge and it's just not that kind of music. So
have you ever heard anybody refer to a baritone as a tenor guitar?
Yeah, maybe, but I think that's something different.
No, this is what apparently David Foster tells players to bring their tenor guitars. Okay, and that's what he means. I
mean, I wouldn't argue with David Foster, but I probably would get some clarification on that.
I kind of love that name, though. I think I'm just going to refer to it as a tenor guitar.
That's fine. Yeah, I get it. But so that puts a limit on my lead playing abilities, I think. So I do try to think more rhythmically when I'm playing baritone. Otherwise,
I think even
like a solo that's too low.
Even Jack White talked about that in It Might Get Loud, and he would talk about the purposeful struggle of playing music and trying to
difficult guitars.
Well, yeah, he'd get difficult guitars that were maybe a little, poorly intonated. He would, I think in the movie, he talks about putting his keyboard one step further away on the next show. So he'd have to move a little bit quicker to do a transition. And he just talks about the struggle of playing music, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing. I would like to hear someone that's maybe more of a technical player say that, though.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like if John Petrucci was like, yeah, I like to play shitty guitars, and not these Ferraris because it forces me. Then I might be like, oh, that's interesting. But like
put a bit more weight
player
behind
like
this
Jack
statement.
White, well, not that I don't, think he doesn't have weight, but obviously he's coming from that sort of minimalist indie DIY kind of sound where that is part of the language. So that makes sense to hear him say that. But I think it would be interesting to hear, Steve Vai come out and be like, yeah, guys, I got this airline.
Yeah.
The strings are this far off the fretboard, and now I'm going to play, For the Love of God.
And it's only got 3 strings.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I like a challenge, Maybe he will.
Yeah, well, we got to get those guys to try out the Django glove.
The Django glove?
You guys haven't been marketed this yet on Facebook? Know what that
is.
Not yet.
Where it's like it contorts your hand so that you have to play in the fashion.
We are truly living in the last days, aren't we? When musicians have gotten so good that, like, you know what we need to do? Let's just make sure you can't use most of your left hand. Yep. That's what we have everything.
Let's do it.
Now we've achieved the pinnacle of all of it. We don't need anything else.
Well, now we know what to get you for Christmas, Mark. Is a Django glove.
I'd rather have a Django mustache, to be honest. I think that'd be a little more my style.
Do both.
Django glove. Get out of here.
The Django glove. Yeah. So
I hope his family's getting money from that.
I don't know. It could be one of those short-lived things, where you see it for a few weeks on Facebook, and then that's it.
And then you have to order what Facebook does Temu best or something. Yeah. Wish.com.
Total Facebook.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, the last thing I wanted to ask you about, and maybe we can all kind of do our final questions to you before we wrap up today, because you've been so generous with your time, is I feel like you're in a elite group of guitar players that have kind of come onto the scene in the last 10 years that have really been able to make a successful career, where you've been able to parlay your guitar playing into a big Instagram following. You have a signature PRS guitar. These are all things that I think many guitar players, hope or wish that they could have. What is your advice to somebody that is looking to, let's say they're in high school now, or they're in college now, they're in music school, and they're looking to be like you? I know there's no cookbook recipe to it, but and I know that there's probably some element of right place, right time, and these factors that are just, intangible. But to the degree that these things are in your control, what would you say are kind of like 3 things that people might consider doing to kind of align themselves in a position where things might be more likely to come together for them than not?
Oh, man. That's a big one. Well, first of all, thank you for the accolades. I hope I'm influencing somebody out there. I don't know. But, I guess if I put myself back at 19-year-old Mark, right, which was only just a few years ago, of course. Of course. I just really wanted to play a lot of music with a lot of people. And I think I just took every opportunity that I could find. I took every opportunity that I could create for myself. To your point about right place, right time, that is absolutely true. But you can create luck for yourself to an extent, right? You know what you need to do. You know where you need to be. You know who you need to be in front of. That kind of thing. You need to know how to act when you get in front of those people, right on stage. Like not like I was doing with Bernard Wright years ago, but that's how you learn. But like I said, I took a lot of risks. I put myself in situations that were uncomfortable. Situations where I knew I would have to work really hard and learn, and maybe I had a track coach in college. He used to say, "Man, fake it till you make it," which is a funny thing to say with music because you don't want to make a career out of bullshitting people. But to his point, it's like, a lot of what you're going to be doing in this job, in this music industry, is learning on the job and figuring out as you go. Like Mason probably will tell you, those session players probably learned as they went. It's not like they graduated from high school and they knew what they were doing. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same thing. For me, I learned a lot just putting myself in situations where I had to learn. I never thought I knew everything. Even if it was a gig that I had done a million times, there was always something I could learn from it, something I could do better, something I could be more mindful of. And so I always just kind of looked at everything as though I was always still a student learning stuff. Not necessarily like learning how to play things. Maybe like, you should kind of try to know as much of that as you can if you want to do this professionally, I guess. But that's a whole other story. But, never walking into a situation feeling like I was the most prepared or intelligent or best or anything like that, Even if maybe I was the most prepared, there's still something more I could learn from each situation. So I always took every opportunity with that kind of viewpoint. And as I started going along, then the certain career things started to mold, like being a solo artist, which was something in the back of my mind from when I was 14 that I think I always wanted to have. I just never knew how to conceptualize it until, I was in my early 30s, basically. But beyond that, I knew what I needed to do to get work as a guitar player. It's like show up on time, have a good attitude, and be prepared. Have gear that works. Doesn't even have to be good gear. Just make sure it works. This was, I was coming up kind of in the early 2000s and stuff like that, and so I think it's different then, than it is now. Social media is such a huge part of people's careers, and I think you can have a healthy relationship with that and a healthy relationship with content creation. I hate that term, but it is what it is. And use it as a way to express yourself, but as a way to connect with people and share what you do, and maybe you'll get some gigs from it. You never know. But if that's not your style, and I get it, I have a lot of friends that are like, "Man, I'm gonna film myself. That's stupid." And I'm like, "Yeah, it kind of is. You're right." but I still have to do it, you know. But they have great careers and they're working because they have built a network for themselves, just, you know, in their scene. I mean, we mentioned Errol Cooney, good friend, amazing guitar player, doesn't do a lot on social media in terms of playing, right?
Yeah.
But he's got all the best gigs.
Yeah.
So obviously he's made the right, you know, networking decisions. And there's loads of guitar players like that. I'm just using him as an example because we know him when you talked about him. You know, for me, I try to do both. As an artist, it's part of the game to engage in that kind of content delivery, right? And I think had I not done it, I probably wouldn't be doing these baritone guitar records, right? So there is a lot to thank
Tenor
for
guitar.
that, I suppose.
Tenor guitar.
Thank you. I know this is a very long, rambling answer, but you know, you gotta be okay to take some risks, to lose, to not be the best all the time. You know, I mean, here's the thing about it: if you're doing this professionally, like in any capacity, everyone's good. You know, like if you're getting paid to do it, you're good. So stop thinking about that. Stop thinking about like, am I the best or am I better than this? It's irrelevant. Just think about what you need to do to you know, be great on the gigs and you know, get your music out there, I guess. I don't know. I need another cup of coffee, or I don't.
No, that's good. That's really good. I like it. I was going to say, this is probably less of a question, but I think in the attempt at trying to make you blush, like we've been trying to do this whole podcast without telling you, just by heaping on compliments. But I still remember the first time I saw you guys play on YouTube, which would have been Snarky Puppy, and I can't remember the album title. Maybe I wrote it down here. It was from We Like It Here. You guys are playing What About Me?
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was that, if anyone listening has seen that series on YouTube, it's where you guys are all wearing, was it Beats headphones or like?
No, they were Audio Technicas.
Okay, so everyone was wearing headphones,
Yeah,
including the audience in the studio. Are they back there in the corner? Yeah.
Still have them.
And I remember seeing you guys play, and I was just like laughing while I was watching that because I was so blown away. I was like, what is happening right now? I couldn't believe it. And I think the thing that got me was, obviously you guys were all technically very proficient on your instrument, but there was something more happening in the room of how you guys were all communicating with each other. And I mean that via music. Like you guys were all having this conversation musically that was so much more than the notes that were being played. And it just like opened up my mind to this whole, not that I'm saying I can do what you guys did, because I absolutely cannot, but it opened up my perspective to what can really be done on an instrument and the weight that music can carry. And I just, I think in one hand, I'm just saying thank you, because I think that was so incredible to you and the whole, you know, Snarky Puppy crew. But at the same time, seeing you also carry that over into the quartet that you do, the Mark Lettieri kind of quartet, Mark Lettieri group, and watching some of those videos, and I see that same kind of feel and respect for what you guys do in that as well. And it's just really, it's really incredible. I think we could just sit here and focus on, yeah, you're really good at guitar, but it's a lot deeper than that. And I think it's really amazing to see what you bring to the industry and what you bring to, you know, us as guitar players, as far as inspiration, to be able to learn how to communicate on our instruments, which goes beyond just the notes that we play, but the ability to stop and pause and then add to the conversation and then listen to the conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful for what you do. I'm really grateful that you came on the podcast today and that we could have a conversation. And really just thankful for what you do and what you'll continue to do with the new album coming out later this year. I'm excited to listen to it. And
thank you, man.
Yeah, it's been a great podcast. So thank you.
I agree. Thanks very much, guys. It's been really
Brian,
fun.
any final thoughts before we close out today and we make maybe Mark play a little guitar for us to finish us off?
Yeah, no, I only have one more question because we were talking about pedal boards. Do you still have the cutting board pedal board?
I do.
You do?
Beautiful.
So obviously you're listening.
I need
you
to
can't
send that
see
in.
this. Hey, I'll send the drone. Mark came to me years ago, and he's like, I have this board. It's not your typical board. I was like, okay, sure. Whatever. I mean, I'll do it. And he's like, it's on a cutting board. I'm like, is it like a cutting board size board? And he goes, no, it's physically on a cutting board. And I was like, oh, okay, funny. Like he's making a joke. And then he walked in with a literal plastic, one of those white plastic cutting boards.
I heard it was latex.
I don't think so. And he had like a plethora, that TC plethora on it, and a bunch of stuff. And he just goes, "Can you make it work?" And I went, "Yep, it will be cutting edge by the time we're done with this thing."
It still was. Yeah.
And it's
Rumor has it
was
still had the smell of raw onions on there as well. If you got really close.
They're like, he's so passionate. He's crying while he's playing. No, that's his board.
Exactly. That's right.
It's onions.
That's right.
But yeah, I was curious if that one was still alive, because I think to the date has been one of the most intriguing boards I think because I always stick to certain platforms, and the cutting board one was a new one, and I love
it's held up, man. I mean, and I put that thing through the ringer. I mean, and it probably needs some
chicken,
TLC to it. Yeah.
Vegetables, it's done it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that was my only question. I thank you. Obviously, I'll be sending, things to you, carrier pigeon, once I find a resource for that.
Brilliant.
But yeah, no, thank you for being on. It was, prior to the podcast, I was talking about it and stuff. I was like, oh, I remember I was literally texting, it would be so cool to have you on the podcast. And before I sent it, I went, oh wait, that's this week. So
right.
I was glad we could all finally get together. So thank you for being on.
For sure, dude.